Little wacky handheld video here. Try to maybe help understand the ideas of 1-point perspective versus 2-point perspective. When I think of 1-point perspective, I think of a couple different things. I think of the object that I'm drawing, and if there's more than one object, then the majority of the objects that I'm drawing. And I try to, I think about whether or not I consider them to be facing me and me facing them. And when I say that, I sort of mean that this line, the horizontal is going to be, the side to side is going to be straight horizontal. And the checkerboard represents sort of the underlying grid that you could draw to help understand what these will sort of appear to aim towards, the various and sundry lines. You'll see at one point, when it's in the middle like this, that I can only see this side and the top face, actually of both the block and the checkerboard. And that is one way I definitely like to think of things when they are sort of trapezoidal in a two-dimensional sense. That makes it pretty obvious. When things start getting out to here, and I can start to see this side as well as the front side here and the top face, that's when I start thinking for myself, is it time for 2-point or not? And for something like this, I would still try to stay in 1-point, because left and right, there's the only thing that's going from forward to backward is just the straight forward to backward lines. So here's the thing: the grid is about what we would expect the lines to do of the object. It's not so much whether it's the lines of our eyes, but it sort of lines up with the object we're looking at. So object, or you heard me say or objects. Because we are humans, we like to organize things and build things in organized, structured fashion so that they line up. So oftentimes you're looking at several things that are sort of looking straight at you because they're all aligned with each other in right angles. And then we all of a sudden have a situation where one thing is not aligned with everything else. So all of a sudden all these lines, these ground plane lines and imaginary lines that would be higher up going back as well, don't really help us with this one so much. And that is because this is clearly in a rotated sort of state, especially from everything else. So I would be thinking of this object in 2-point perspective. I would be thinking about the lines going that way and the lines going that way. And even though it's in the same sort of drawing or the same composition, it's not so much the composition that you define as only being one or the other, but I like to think of it as the majority of the objects. So hopefully that made a little sense. And here's the next thing I want to say. We sort of think of these grids and drawing out these floor grids to help us understand how to measure things back and how they will appear. And I think one of the things that gets confusing is when we think about 2-point perspective. The idea is not that we're keeping the same grid and rotating the object, but that indeed we're rotating the grid to help us understand how the object is going to appear and where the edges and the lines are going to appear. So because we are human and we like to build things in organized, structured fashion, streets and buildings and houses and lions and tigers. No, oftentimes most things in whatever you're drawing will be sort of at a certain rotation, a certain orientation, and they'll still be aligned with one another. But now I'm facing them in a way that's I see the front, mostly the front edges, and then just this edge, and then the sides. I see all three. I see top, right side, and left side. Top, right, and left. But every once in a while, in a 2-point perspective, you might have something sitting straight on all of a sudden. I'm going to make it even more straight on to make it clear that now that object, which is sitting in this group of 2-point perspective things, and I've drawn this grid to help me understand where things should aim, that's not really going to help me with this particular thing, with this object. So then I would go about figuring out a different way of approaching that. So you both have the situation where most of the things are in 1 point, most or all are in 1-point perspective, and they're lined up all at right angles with each other like that. And then this grid I create in that, and to go along with the majority of, in this case, everything. But so yes, once we get something like that, now this object, which is no longer aligned with all the others, is not in the same perspective. And this will have its own little challenges, which I'll get to and clarify some things as well. So hopefully that clears it up. Write down any questions, because I know it is confusing. So there you have it.